Thank you. We'll begin with RS 2016-311, sponsors Pridemore, Gilmore, and Allen. This approves the First Amendment to the lease agreement between Metro Social Services Department and Metro Homeless Commission and the City Road Chapel United Methodist Church for the use of additional office space. Thanks. Do I have a second? I'll second. It's been moved and duly seconded. Is there any discussion? If none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is recommended. Next is BL 2016-317. Sponsor is Allen. Requests the Mayor's Office of Economic Opportunity Empowerment to work with the Metro Council's Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Committee to develop and implement a comprehensive plan to address the issue of housing affordability in Nashville and Davidson County. Moved and seconded. There has been a request for a voice vote or roll call vote on this one, which I will honor. So if you will hold your hands up for a long time, Mr. Jameson and I will try to make a note of that. I have a chart, Mr. Jameson. Maybe that will help. So it's been moved and duly seconded. I see one person in discussion, Mr. Glover. Yes, sir. What
I'm trying to understand, given that the mayor has now filed a bill that's on first reading, does that not accommodate? I mean, I'm just trying to understand how this fits in with what the mayor's office has already filed.
Good question. I think I'll answer that as a sponsor of the bill. This is simply a resolution to recognize that this is a very complicated problem, the whole issue of housing affordability that has many parts and pieces. That bill is one part of it, but it's not the whole solution. The Housing Advocacy Committee had continued to be frustrated that each bill that we presented wasn't a total solution. So this is to acknowledge that it will take many legislative pieces and organizations and departments working together. This is simply requiring the mayor's office to be the umbrella organization to quantify those needs and to provide a regular review process to look at metrics to see if we're actually accomplishing our goals.
Okay, I guess I want to kind of make sure that I paraphrase what you just said.
Okay.
This won't require the mayor's office, but yet it says in here a resolution requesting the mayor's office. So, correct. I mean, what are we doing? Are we requiring or are we requesting?
We are requesting the mayor to come up with a comprehensive plan, and the plan will require metrics and goals and a review process.
Okay. So, if the mayor's office said, I don't think they would, I'm just thinking both sides of the fence here. If the mayor's office says we don't want to do that, does this resolution say, no, you have to?
This one doesn't.
Okay.
If we need to get.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand what the purpose of this is. So, okay. Thank you, Chair.
Welcome. Other questions? Okay. That being said, we're asking for a roll call vote. This will take a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand very high and hold them there for a long time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any opposed? Good. Approved. Next are bills on second reading. We'll begin with BL 2016-250, sponsors Roten, Pridemore, and others. This authorizes the Director of Public Property to enter into a sublease agreement with Active Network LLC and Donaldson Corporate Center, LP, for temporary office space at 3055 Lebanon Pike. Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Is there an amendment? Yes. Okay, there are two new exhibits. Is the sponsor here, or Mr. Pridemore, would you like to? Making sure you're here. There are two amendments. Are there any questions on those? We discussed it pretty well in budget.
Slight typographical. But the substance of the amendment is to add two new exhibits to replace two exhibits, the sublease, the 250-page document that could not go through our scanner.
Okay. Mr. Sledge. Fine. Mr. Glover, you wish to speak again?
So we need to move the amendment on this one, correct? Okay, so I move the amendment.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? Amendment passes. Need to move
Move
the
as
bill.
amended.
Thank you. Been moved and amended as, moved and seconded as amended. All those in favor of BL 250 as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is approved as recommended. Next is BL 2016310, sponsors Pridemore, Allen, and Elrod, amends the Metro Code regarding public proceedings for franchises for fiber optic communication services.
Move.
Been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Councilmember Murphy.
I was just seeing if we can get a little bit more clarification about this. I didn't hear it all in budget,
Yes,
to
ma'am.
just see why we're removing public hearing.
Sir. Mr. Jameson.
Sure. Actually, it doesn't refer to a public hearing, and I had that same thought originally. It just refers to a public proceeding. And so mechanically, the way that we had envisioned that would it be a three-part committee process involving public works planning and budget and finance. This is somewhat of an anachronism in the code. We don't apply this to any other type of application or franchise application solely for fiber optics. There could, however, be an era where we see many more of these than we have in years past. So in discussions with Metro Legal, the suggestion was put forward that we allow a more streamlined version where the applicant, instead of appearing before that committee to go over his character and legal and financial background, he submit a detailed report under oath via affidavit. And then if at any point that triggers a request by the council to have the public proceeding, we do have that option, but otherwise it allows a more efficient process. At least that was the hope.
And how will this apply to there's one currently
There's
in the
one-
works?
Correct, that's Tennessee backhaul. That has already gone to planning or scheduled for, I think on the 28th, and then we'll come back here. Under the current code, this would affect only those forthcoming after that.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Those recommended. Next is BL 2016313, sponsors Pridemore, Allen, and others. This approves a license agreement between the Metro Department of Parks and Recreation and the State Commissioner of Tennessee of Transportation to construct and maintain a multi-use pedestrian greenway in Davidson County. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Yes. Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016314, sponsors Sledge, Allen, and Elrod. This abandons a portion of Wade Avenue and alley number 649 right-of-way and easement. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016315, sponsors Kendall, Allen, and Elrod. This abandons a portion of alley number 588 right-of-way and easement. I do have a letter from the sponsor to approve. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016316, sponsors Pulley, Allen, and Elrod. This abandons a portion of Rosemont Avenue right-of-way. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016317, sponsors O'Connell, Allen, and Elrod. This authorizes Metro to abandon an existing sewer main, water main, and easements and accepts a new water main, sewer main, manhole assemblies, and easements for property located at 900 Rosa L. Parks Boulevard. Been moved and seconded. Do I have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Now we're on bills on third reading. First up is BL 2016199, sponsor is Hurt. This makes provisions to the contextual overlay district for various properties located along Boyce Court, Buena Vista Pike, Charles Court, Dove Place, Dyer Court, East Fairview Drive, Eve Circle, Flicker Drive, Harold Pruitt Drive, Haynes Park Court, Haynes Park Drive, Hummingbird Drive, Kings Lane, Kingview Court, Kingsview Drive, Mallard Drive, Pheasant Drive, Tucker Road, West Hamilton Avenue, and Walters Court. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016217, sponsor is Hastings. This changes 17.46 acres from R6 to IWD. Zoning for properties located at 2915, 2917, 2919, 2919B, Brick Church Pike, and Brick Church Pike unnumbered, located 975 feet north of Fern Cove Drive. I don't think I have a letter from the sponsor on this one. So we will move it to the heel. Please help me remember that. Anybody would like to tell the sponsor we're missing him? Next is BL 2016-218, sponsors Bircher and Hagar. This amends Chapter 1740 of Title 17 of Metro Code zoning regulations pertaining to the zoning application fees and public hearing notice costs for amendments to the official zoning map initiated by a member or members of the Metro Council. Been moved and seconded. Do I have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-219, sponsors Bedney Johnson, Karen Johnson, and others. This was disapproved by the Planning Commission. This changes 7.84 acres from R10 to RS10 zoning for property located at Forest View Drive, unnumbered, approximately 430 feet east of Murfreesboro Pike. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. Been seconded. Councilmember Bedney.
Thank you, Chair. I'm moving to defer this to the meeting on November 1st.
Thank you. Defer to November 1st. Okay. All right, it's been moved that we would defer to November 1st. All in favor? Any opposed? Bill is deferred to the, is that officially November 1st, or is that the first meeting in November?
In November.
Okay. Bill is deferred. Next is BL 2016-266, sponsors Alan Dowell and Mina Johnson. This amends the Metro Zoning Code pertaining to the inactivity of planned unit developments and specific plans. Do I have a motion? Second. Mr. Bedney, do you want to speak on this one, or you? Okay, I'm going to turn you off. Mr. Glover.
Chair, I know we're moving on the PUDs and SPs from a 6-year to 4-year, if I'm remembering the analysis correctly. What's the flexibility if we hit another downturn in the economy as we did a few years ago? And I mean, I've got an SP that's coming back up right now that was approved in 2007, and they're just now able to come back and start building it right now. What's the feasibility, or what is the opportunity that will be afforded us to kind of keep this on the back burner in the event we hit another economic downturn? Because 4 years, if the economy tanks starting in 6 months, and we've now moved this to a 4-year cycle versus the 6-year, I'm just trying to figure out, are we really doing the developers any favors, or are we doing ourselves any favors? And what's the actual benefit, I guess, of doing this?
Thank you. I will let planning answer that question.
I wanted to add that when the SP ordinance was first adopted, there was a requirement for the planning department to automatically look at every SP each 4 years without a request from a council member, while the PUD section required a request from someone to review the PUD. That always required a 4-year time period for the automatic review. When it went to a review that needed to be requested, a portion of that ordinance kept the time period at 4 years, and another portion of that ordinance changed it to 6 years. So right now, there's a conflict, and this is just cleaning up that conflict. So there's one reference to 6 years and 2 references to 4 years.
Okay, so talk to me about how this, so it does a review. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have to spend money again in order to bring it back through planning or whatnot, or tell me how that works, please.
The review can be requested by a council member or another property owner within the PUD, and then the Planning Commission looks at it to determine whether the development, much like a potential PUD, has been active or inactive. And so this is just the review for active or inactive. If the Planning Commission determines that it's been inactive, they then make a recommendation to the council on the appropriate zoning. The council member is not then required to rezone the property.
Okay, so I guess there's my sticking point. So if a developer has something that has been zoned as an SP, and we have another economic downturn, if you come back after the 4-year period and you say, well, we really need to revert it back to RS-15, are you saying that that's what the Planning Commission could do, and we would do that?
The Planning Commission would make a recommendation on whether the development has been active or inactive over the past 4 years and suggest to the council the appropriate zoning district. It would be up to the council to take that action to rezone the property.
Okay, all right, thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Bedning. Sorry. Try again.
Thank you. I think I would like to present the opposite of what Councilman Glover was presenting. For me, because of the many dormant rezonings in my district, I find myself not being so open-minded about new rezonings when they come to me, because I'm concerned about the existing dormant rezonings coming online. As recently, I had like thousands of apartments getting built on Bell Road, and these were rezonings that had been done a long time ago. So if I could have a better sense of what is active, what could potentially come online, it will help me be more open-minded when I'm talking to a developer about a new project, which is usually more in tune with the new reality of the infrastructure in my district. And it's a zero-sum game. I mean, you only have the infrastructure you have. And to decide if it's sustainable, you need to take everything into account. So I think it's a good idea to have limits on dormant rezonings as a way to be more sustainable about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Withers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could I get the planning staff to just summarize for the council members what steps or actions would be counted as for the Planning Commission as having a specific plan be active or inactive?
There are 3 determinations that the Planning Commission needs to make. Several of them are around construction, whether any right-of-way from a third party has been acquired, or whether any actual construction takes place. There is a provision in the zoning code now about the aggregate of actions over the last 12 months. Council Lady Mina Johnson is working with us on a separate bill to tighten that language up a little bit. The Planning Commission has considered various things under the aggregate of actions, from purchasing the property to developing engineered plans or architectural plans. There's been a variety of things that they've included in that portion of the ordinance.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy. Oops. Hang on, I've got to turn off a few. Councilmember Murphy.
I think my questions have been asked and answered, but I want to just clarify. So when it comes up, it is not mandatory that y'all find this inactive and the council change the zoning or adjust the PUD or anything like that. It would be at the will of the council member at the time.
To actually rezone it, that's correct. It would require us to look at whether it's active or inactive and provide that information to the council member. But as far as rezoning it, that would be up to the council member.
And so this might be more of a legal question at this point, as we have heard so much and had so much discussion over vesting rights lately. How does that play into when the Planning Commission finds a PUD inactive, or, yeah, I guess in this case, inactive, and the council member at that time decides to rezone it? Are we setting ourselves up to conflict with a vested property, or is it pretty much if it's inactive, it's not vested?
Right, because the requirements for vesting, that you have your final development plan or the equivalent thereof, would mean that you've more than likely done at least one of the things that the Planning Commission reviews to determine activity level.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember Vercher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to make sure that I'm clear on this, especially with, all the PUD conflicts that we're experiencing out in Southeast, the dormant PUDs, the old PUDs, no infrastructure, overcrowding, crime, et cetera, et cetera. So this bill is resolving the conflict between the PUDs and the SP with the 4 and the 6 years. Is it addressing any of the language with the SP is required? Is it addressing the language with the PUD that planning shall review instead of may review?
This ordinance is the ordinance that we suggested and talked to council members about because we had a conflict when PUD applications or SP applications were being made to the planning department. We weren't able to, if a PUD application was made and then a council member subsequently requested a review of the PUD, we weren't able to stop that application through the process. And so this bill adds to the language that's currently in the code that says that building permits can't get issued while a PUD is under review for inactivity, and that grading permits can't get issued while it's under review. This adds language to say that PUD applications and SP applications to the planning department can't be submitted, reviewed, or approved. And so it stops the review of those applications while the Planning Commission is making a determination on whether it's active or inactive. The 4 and 6 years, we were just trying to clean that up while we were looking at the rest.
Okay, that's another section that I was referring to. Thank you.
Councilmember Hagar.
Thank you. This is for Ms. Logan. You say they review every 4 years, correct?
The review used to be automatic every 4 years for an SP. That language has changed in the code so that it happens at the request of a council member or another property owner in the PUD, in the SP, just like a PUD district. So now they no longer happen automatically. It at the request of the council member.
So are you telling me I'd have to keep up with it and then request of y'all to review that PUD or the SP? Is that correct?
We provide all of the adopted SPs, and we're certainly able to work with you on any SPs that you have concerns about in your district.
Well, the only reason I'm asking that is because, every 4 years, the council might turn over and then another council person comes in and won't know about these SPs or PUDs like I didn't know about some of them in my district. So what you're saying is it won't be automatic then. We'll have to just keep up with it.
It's currently not automatic, and under this ordinance, it remains not automatic.
Well, can we make it automatic?
We could go back to that. However, I will say that process took a significant amount of the planning department's resources. There were a lot of SPs that complied with the policy and the council member was fine with, and it was the vast majority of the SPs that we were required to spend time, staff time, looking at, sending them to the commission, sending notices. So there was a significant cost to the department as far as staff time and costs associated with the actual application, that a very low percentage of them were actually inactive.
Well, what if you just send notice to the council person in that council district? Would that be a big problem?
We can certainly look into see whether our system will let us create something automatically to do that. We can look at that.
Okay, thank you.
If I might, I believe that y'all have at least compiled a list of all the PUDs in each council district and sent those to council members. Is that correct?
Yes, the council, all PUDs with vacant property, I believe, is what was sent to the council.
Okay.
So that PUDs and SPs that are not developed have all been sent to every district council member.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I'm not saying you got to send out notice to everybody, just that particular council member, when they come up on the 4-year review, can we not, somebody from planning just send them a notice that this is 4 years, if you want to review it, there it is?
We can see if our system has that capability.
That wouldn't be very expensive or cost any money, correct? Okay, thank you.
And I believe in the meantime, it's possible to send a list of all the PUDs and their dates. So you could look from that. It seems like that's what you sent me.
Yes. And every district council member should have that list for their district of all PUDs and SPs. We do have a section on our webpage that has an interactive map as well that will show each SP in the district along with the adopted plan and minutes from the Planning Commission, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm saying if you're going to review them every 4 years, if they come up 4 years, I'm just asking, is there a way in your policy to just kind of ding us, 4 years is up and you want to look at this, you can?
We'll see if that's possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good suggestion. Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to give a little clarification why I am supporting this bill is because every development, if a council person works with the development community and the community surrounding the neighborhood, it comes with win-win-win situation. But if a development community and a council member does not communicate to each other, that's when misinformation is happening and unnecessary headache for both parties. So having this ordinance will force council member to take charge and has a great communication with the development community. So I think this will fix part of the problem we are facing right now as in a POD or SP. So that's my reasoning for sponsoring this bill.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to ask planning staff, is this something that eventually technology might actually assist with so that it requires less staff time and we could actually tag in the system in some way these things so that they could be more effectively automated so that we kind of get to address Councilman Hager's concerns but also address planning staff concerns?
The notification, we're certainly going to look into what our system will allow us to do. Metro just went to a new development review system a few months ago, and so we will see if we are able to do that with that system. The actual review for inactive or active is a more time intensive. It requires us to contact the property owner, ask them what they have done at the property, for them to get in touch with us, analyze all the information from the property owner, developer, and what the community sends us as well, put that all together and send it to the Planning Commission. So from a technology side, we will certainly look to see whether we can provide the council members with that information.
Councilmember Withers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo what Councilmember Amina Johnson said. I think that having a fresh set of eyes on something every 4 years, if a project is not underway, is a really good idea. We, as a council body, and certainly the last council body, has done a lot of work to upgrade Metro requirements for bicycle parking, stormwater requirements, any number of things like that. And if a development perhaps has not started yet, it would be wise to see if there are maybe some new tweaks or things like that we should incorporate into that plan as the needs of our city change. So I'm very much in support of this bill.
And Councilmember Johnson, do you wish to speak again? Okay. You're recognized.
Thank you. Because of the so many technological questions, I just want to mention there's Metro has a website called Development Tracker, and if you go into Development Tracker using the search function, you can search any SP or POD or any project in the entire Davidson County. So anybody, not only us council member, but anybody who's interested in what's happening around your neighborhood can look up and check the project in the process system.
And I would say if there's interest, we could ask planning to have a special session at some point to how to navigate the planning website and find things like that, which might be helpful. You may have figured it out by now, but if there's interest in doing that, let me know and we'll set that up. Is there any further discussion on this bill? This one has also been requested for a roll call vote. You can raise your other hand this time and exercise that one. So that's been moved and approved and thoroughly discussed. All those in favor, please raise your other hand and hold it up for a long time. But yes, sir. That is a fair enough question. The Chamber of Commerce has asked for these votes, for a roll call vote. That being said, raise your hand proudly. Okay. All those, okay. So we are voting on BL 266, which is the one, I'll reread it, that amends the Metro Code pertaining to the inactivity of planned unit developments and specific plans. Okay. Either hand. I was just saying everybody had to hold their left hand up so long they might be tired. Raise your hand of choice. Thank you very much. All right, put your hands down. Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Hurt.
I'm confused a little bit because it seems like these bills are similar. This one, the one that Councilwoman Johnson has, and another one that Councilwoman Dow has. And you know, and if you're going to be for one, then should you be for all? Or if you are against it, should you be consistent in that? I'm confused about whether we will be subjecting Metro to possibly being sued, and wondering if we need to offer a separate bill that says that any workforce housing or less should be not concentrated in any area, but need to be spread out all over the county.
So I'm gonna let planning mostly answer that one. This just deals with the review process in general, which has always been there, and it is simply added. I'm going to let Carrie do this because she'll do it better than I will. It's simply added one extra piece that will be part of the review process. And if you will explain other bills that are pending so that we can distinguish specifically about changing the review plus. I think they're just two, Councilmember Johnson's, and this one actually was requested by Councilmember Dowell, so she and I are co-sponsoring that one.
Okay.
So if planning can discuss those two so that we're clear on what's coming up.
In a number of zoning districts, specifically PUDs and SPs, it requires a series of applications to the planning department before you can get permits. And with the PUD inactivity review, it required the Metro not issue any permits while the PUD was being reviewed by the Planning Commission. Though the applications to the Planning Commission were still being processed because we had to process them. And so the bill that we're discussing at the moment would require us to stop the review of any PUD applications or SP applications while the review of inactivity was taking place so that we could determine whether it was active or inactive before continuing that review. That's the ordinance, this ordinance. The second ordinance is one to change the criteria of what the Planning Commission look at during the inactivity review, and specifically to define what we would look at for the aggregate of actions. And that Councilor Mina Johnson has deferred for us to work with her on that language.
Other question. I'd like to ask a point of clarification. If a council member has asked for a PUD review, then someone who came in asking for an application to build with that PUD would be told they had to wait. If someone had started that process and then a council member comes and asks for a PUD review, how is that treated?
We would put that application on hold, just like building permits or grading permits would currently be put on hold.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other council members are asking to speak. Councilmember Bedney.
It's a question for Mr. Jamieson. If I don't want to raise my hand, am I going to be escorted by the police why do I have to, why I'm being forced to do that?
The committees set their own rules, but under the general rules and how the clerk operates is that if you are present and do not cast a vote, you are recorded as abstaining.
So isn't there a way to suspend the rules? Or, I mean, if I don't really want to do that, if I'm against that, if we are against that, so how do we do that?
The executive committee that met a couple of weeks ago considered a request from the Chamber of Commerce that had requested roll calls on information on previous votes, and that was not recorded because 4 of the 5 rooms that we use don't have any camera equipment, and even in this room, the majority of ayes and noes can't be seen on the camera. So there was some difficulty in determining whether or not we would just initiate a roll call on each and every committee vote. In the interests of transparency, that is a great thing to do. In the interests of time consumption, that's a horrible thing to do because it'll take us as long as you've seen taking today for us to do it. So the executive committee voted that we would honor those requests as long as one council member made the request, regardless of who is submitting it from the outside, in this case, the chamber. In this case, the chair has made that request. I think there's a total of 4 votes tonight that the chamber has requested that vote on. If you do not cast a vote, again, the committee can form its own rules. Generally speaking, you would be recorded as abstaining, and that's the layout.
And if this is a topic we want to take up, we can put that on an agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think it's Council Lady Gilmore at the last Health Committee. She was having an issue with the fact that we are being asked to do their work. I mean, they are interested in having this information. They could send somebody here and collect the information. And yet here we are asking to be monkeys, raising our hands like we are just playing for a zoo. I mean, if they want the information, they should be here. I mean, anybody.
I believe they are here.
We are on camera. People know, how we are voting. So I honestly, it's frustrating to me that an interest group is getting us to go through all these. I mean, I know right now I'm talking more than what it will take to vote, but I'm just talking in general. I think as a council, we need to discuss what are our priorities and how we are going to handle this sort of thing. So thank you. I apologize, Chair, for taking the time.
Certainly. Councilmember Johnson, do you wish to speak again? No. Mr. Glover. All right, you're on.
All right, thank you, Chair. All right, so I was thinking one way until you just said something, Carrie. All right, so we're 3 years, 10 months into the project, and nothing's happened, and I decide that I'm going to sell it. I found a buyer that wants to buy my property. And because I'm 2 months away from a review process, I've now begun the process of selling my property, even though I've not pulled a permit, or even though I may not have done anything yet that, quote, will vest me into that right. But because I've only got 2 months left, if it took 90 days, and all of a sudden we decide now that we're gonna institute this review process, then we basically, in one way or another, we are taking away the rights of that owner, if I understood you correctly, because the minute that you begin a review process, we no longer can, you won't issue permits, you won't issue anything, it's because it's in a review process. So it's like pending legislation again, is my understanding, if I understood what you said correctly.
Right now, under the current language of the code, they are not able to obtain permits, building permits or grading permits. And so this does offer an element of protecting them from investing more in their applications until that review process is over. If they continue to go through the planning department applications with us, they could be investing more money in engineering or site design, and then ultimately not be able to get permits anyway. And so the building permit and the grading permit portion is currently on hold under the existing language in the zoning code. It's just the language about PUD applications or SP applications.
Okay, so Mr. Jameson, how do we address the issue of a property owner's rights with regards to 3 years and 10 months? They've sat on the piece of property. They've not been able to make the project happen. They've got a buyer that's coming in and wants to buy it. I mean, have we basically stalled them from being able to sell that piece of property because of this new 4-year plan on an SP versus 6 years?
Well, two things. Number one, if they are vested, then they've already gotten their development plan, so they probably have done what they need to do in order to be deemed active in terms of a PUD or SP review. But at some point, does the council have to pick an uncomfortable dividing line between a PUD that has remained inactive? Remember, these used to sit inactive until 2007 for decades.
Right.
And suddenly popped up in the middle of your district a development plan that was now wholly incompatible with the neighborhood that had emerged around it. In 2007, this review process was passed. We required 3 components, essentially some sort of construction activity or even off-site construction activity or the pulling of your permits, in addition to the aggregate of action issue that's being reviewed now. So bottom line, if you're already vested, you've done one of those things. You're probably not going to have a deemed inactive PUD. And if you're not after the number of years, after nearly 4 years, if you have not vested, then the council could reasonably conclude that you do not have an anticipated development of the PUD development.
I guess from my standpoint, I'm looking a little bit more at the SP piece of it because I don't think we really do PUDs now. I think probably for the PUD, that's probably a very real concern. For the SPs, I'm trying to find a balance of how do we make sure we try to protect the owner's rights. You know, I'm trying to figure out, do we put another component in here as opposed to 3 components? There maybe is a 4th component that if a sale is initiated, and frankly, I don't know that the government really has to know if I'm trying to sell my property, but I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way that we can help protect that property owner, that if a sale is initiated, then that would be a fourth component to where we could not step in and kind of, for lack of a better word, blow the deal up on them.
One thing to consider is when you're setting the duration. So when we apply a 4-year duration, that's actually a more generous period of time than the vesting statute applies. The vesting does not give you indefinite development rights. If you're deemed vested, you get 3 years, 3 years within which to begin construction, have the site prepared, have your permits pulled. If you do not do that within 3 years, you are no longer vested. So we are applying essentially a similar caliber to SPs of 4 years duration, which is arguably more generous than what the state has applied for vesting purposes.
And my point, and what I'm trying to try and think through all the way, is the point of if at 3 years and 10 months they've not been able to make it happen, they know it's coming up, and they sell it, and somebody else says, I can work under this scenario. I'm trying to figure out how do we find that balance to protect that property owner.
And that's unfortunately a policy decision that is for you and your colleagues to decide what duration makes sense in balancing those interests.
I wonder if we split the middle and we had a 6, we're trying to move to a 4. If we come to a 5, I mean, I wonder if on this, because there may be some unintended consequences. I wonder if the sponsors would mind deferring at least for one meeting, just to have further discussion.
I have no problem with that. Other sponsor? Councilmember Dowell.
Thank you. I actually do have a problem with deferring it because we've had this conversation over the course. Councilman Glover, you served with us last term, and so this conversation has come up numerous times about development in the district. What I've discovered that as a property owner, I don't think it has any unintentional consequences because most people who are actively developing their property have the plans. They've had some type of activity on the property, and they're engaged with the council member on their property. I think what we find is there are opportunities out there where we've had property that have sat for many years. In many cases, it's not just 3 years. I think in most cases you'll find these are properties that were zoned back in the 90s. And things have changed, and we should review those because what I see occurring now is that the community has changed, the plan has changed. We're not taking into account the impact to our taxpayers when they create these huge developments in communities. There's no road infrastructure plans, is that at any point in time they can come, build, and we have to absorb all those costs. And so I think it only makes sense to just take a review of that. So I would ask that I think most people here, we've talked about it, you're familiar with it. I would say that we just move forward. I'll be happy to sit down and discuss with you. And if there are some unintentional consequences where some people feel like they're disadvantaged, I'll be happy to address those through amending it at some point. But I think we should move forward.
I would also, I'll add 2 things. One, this is amendable on 3rd reading, is that correct? So we do have 2 weeks to talk about potential amendments. And also, we do have a motion to approve that's out there, so we'll need to resolve that motion first. That being said, Councilmember Kathleen Murphy, do you wish to speak? Okay, please do.
And I'm sorry, we've got such a large agenda tonight that you may have said this and I have forgotten already. When I first read this, I thought that this was like a major change. But what you said earlier was that this is more of a housekeeping clarifying. Could you go over that again? Like, so most places it's 4 years, but we just had it didn't get changed in some previous legislation. Well, go over that again.
Specifically on the issue for SPs of 4 or 6 years, there are 2 sections in the code that reference 4 years, I believe, and 1 section that references 6. So the idea was just to clean up that discrepancy while we were looking at the other language that addressed the submission and review of applications to the planning department during the inactivity review.
So this seems like to me that not only are we making that technical correction, but this is almost like a housekeeping type of legislation to clarify across the board how we do these things. And so the council's clear, y'all are clear, things change, and we're simply modifying and modernizing the process. Is that a fair characterization?
It does add our applications to the building permit and grading permit. I think that does help eliminate a lot of confusion through the process, because we have had requests to stop PUD reviews, PUD application reviews, while the council members' inactivity review was happening, and we just weren't able to do that because we didn't have language in the code to support us.
Okay, so I think this sounds like this is pretty cut and dry where we are on this, and especially with how much confusion has been out there we've been here, almost a year, and so if this is clarifying confusion and planning, by all means, we need to get the ball rolling. Thank you.
Councilmember Bodney, do you want to speak again?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to apologize to the lady from the chamber. She was here and I didn't know, so I'm sorry for making that comment. And second of all, I want to repeat that this is an urgent situation. I really want to be able to work with developers in my district that are interested in doing new rezonings. And I don't know that the rest of you understand how dire the situation is in the Southeast when it comes to infrastructure. We are really landlocked. We are really in a bad place. And we have to surgically decide when we are going to approve a rezoning or not. And unless we can account for all the existing ones and know if they're going to be done or not, we are in a bad situation to even talk to new people. So this is helpful to have more clarity, and I want to second what Councilor Lady Dowell said on not to defer and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's left? Are these new requests? Councilmember Glover?
First of all, we're on third reading, aren't we?
Hold on. Yes.
That was why I was asking for a one-meeting deferral to where, I mean, I would like to talk to Mr. Jameson about adding language in here that if a property owner initiates a sale of the property in 3 years, 6 months, 3 years, 8 months, whatever the case may be, perhaps in that situation, that's a fourth condition that it gives them another 6 months, or, I mean, let's be realistic on a time, but that's what I'm thinking. But we're on third reading, so that's why I was asking for a one-meeting deferral.
That's correct.
I apologize for confusing the issue. We are on third reading. Okay. That being said, we do still have the motion that is currently pending is to approve. So we will need to deal with that motion, and if
you want to defer, you would vote no on approval.
And then we have another motion.
On the deferral.
And then there's a motion on deferral. Okay. I'll let Mr. Jameson say that again.
If your intention is to defer, you would vote no on the approval at this point, presumably with the follow-up motion by Councilman Glover for the deferral. But
Well,
right now,
let me simplify it if I can, Mr. Jameson. After this passes, and we all figure it's going to pass right now, can I bring back an amendment that says to add a fourth component? Because I just think that's important for property owners. I don't have a problem with passing this. I'm just trying to think through the unintended consequences.
Right.
So I'm good with that. Then I'll withdraw my deferral, and then I would like Mr. Jameson language to be brought back to amend this for property owners in the event of sale.
in separate legislation.
Yes. Yeah. However we do it.
Thank you. Good suggestion.
Right, thank you.
Any other discussion? I think all these other requests are old. That being said, we are voting on the motion to approve BL 2016-266.
The roll call.
With the roll call, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next is BL 2016. Excuse me? I'm sorry. All those opposed, I put you down as an X. I apologize. So, all those opposed, you can officially say it. So, gotcha. Thank you. Good discussion. Next is BL 2016-267, sponsors Huezo Swope. This amends the Metro Zoning Code pertaining to boat storage. Do we have a sponsor here? I don't think we do. We'll move that one to the heel. Help me remember. Is BL 2016-269, sponsor is Murphy. Changes 1.2 acres from CS and R6 to CSA zoning for properties located at 288 and 292 White Bridge Pike. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. I've wiped out all the discussion, so if you just pushed your button, you'll need to push it again. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 201, whoops. Next is BL 2016-270, sponsor is Hastings, changes 1.55 acres from CL to MULA zoning for property located at 1002 West Trinity Lane at the southwest corner of the intersection of Youngs Lane and West Trinity Lane. I do have a letter from the sponsor asking for approval. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-271, sponsors O'Connell, changes 0.17 acres from CS to MUNA zoning for property located at 1211 7th Avenue North. Yes, there is a substitute. Do you wish to say anything about that? I have to find you first. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The substitute literally just changes the name of the applicant to the individual making the rezoning request. And they're going to build a single-family home, which had the broad support of the neighborhood. So I would like to renew my motion.
Great. All those in favor of the substitute? Any opposed? All those, would you like to move the bill as substituted? Yes, John. All right. All those in favor of the bill as substituted? Any opposed? Substitute is recommended. Next is BL 2016-273, sponsors Roberts, changes 0.16 acres from R8 to SP zoning for property located at 5804 Ethel Street to permit 2 detached residential units. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-274, sponsors Syracuse, changes 2.59 acres from CL to CSA zoning for properties located at 1620 and 1634 Lebanon Pike. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-275, sponsors Van Rees. This changes 1.47 acres from RS 7.5 to SP zoning for properties located at 903 and 905 Curdwood Boulevard to permit up to 8 residential units. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Murphy.
I'm sorry, I just didn't remember if Council Lady could speak to, because it looks like the existing zoning would do 8 units, and the disapproved zoning, or it's approved by the Planning Commission?
Correct.
If she could just speak to that and clarify what happened.
I appreciate the opportunity. This location actually is right at the end, a dead-end street right next to the train track. And the 8 units actually are rather small. You might remind me the average size of the square footage on those. I think it's like 900 square feet. They're smaller, like cottage-like. And the beauty of this particular situation is that the developer is willing to go ahead and build the road for us to connect these 2 communities, and so it's pretty exciting. We had 3 full community meetings and a coffee as early as January of this year to discuss this, and it has the community support, and we're really actually excited about the concept of these smaller places and being able to have opportunities for folks to have basically a cottage where you can either have a first home or a last home situation. So I'm pretty excited about it, and I appreciate your approval.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-276, sponsor Scott Davis, disapproved by the Planning Commission 5-1. This changes 0.17 acres from OR 20 to RM 40 zoning for properties located at 121, 121B, 123, 125, and 127 Berry Street. Do I have a motion? From someone on the committee? Good. Been moved and seconded. Mr. Davis, would you like to speak? Move for approval. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yes, I see some. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the bill disapproved by planning commissioners. But if I remember the discussion, it was disapproved by planning commissioners because it was the policy does not support. However, seems like this was a really great plan. So if you would give me the little background of the project of the planning staff, then I would like to make some comment.
On this particular project, we don't have a plan that we're reviewing. They're requesting to rezone from OR 20 to RM 40. The OR 20 zoning on this piece of property would allow 3 units, and they're requesting to have 4 units. The surrounding neighborhood is zoned predominantly on the street that this faces, SP that allows only single-family units with a detached accessory dwelling unit. The units there that are constructed, there are 2 constructed of the 4 that they're attempting to build, and those are 3-story units, I believe, in an area that's predominantly 1.5 to 2 stories. And so the existing OR 20 zoning is already inconsistent with the policy on the property, and this would increase it from 3 units to 4.
Councilmember Sledge. You're good, okay. Councilmember Murphy.
Can I get clarification? So the existing zoning's 3, they have 2 already built. They want to go to a zoning that would allow 6, but they're only building 4?
It would allow up to 6. Our understanding is that they're building only 4, but it would allow up to 6.
I guess if the councilman could speak to if we know it's going to be limited to 4 or if it's going to go up to 6, because this is a neighborhood maintenance policy area, is that right? Okay.
Councilmember.
The neighborhood association president was here and with 4 other members ready to speak. They're in support of this because to the right of this is River Chase, which is 300 units, and in front of it is a quadplex. Now, this was already zoned OR 20, okay? And the neighborhood much rather have 4 units than office space there. The developer has been to all the McFerrin Park meetings, and as before, you saw no opposition against this because the area of maintenance, this area, people work, and it's hard for them to come to meetings at 4 o'clock when this policy was being reviewed. You know, it wasn't Planning Commission's fault, it was Nashville Nexus' fault, and that is why, you know, that my neighborhood supported this, because you look to the right, not even, you could throw a rock, and that's River Chase, which is a large-scale multifamily development, and right across the street, there are 4 units. You know, that's why they're fine with this being appropriate.
So, I'm sorry, so you have the guarantee that this is 4 units, or is this going to be 6 units?
After this is done, it will be a total, there's 2 there now, it'll be a total of 4, it'll be a total of 4 there, you know, on this parcel. Right now, there's 2, and then there will be 2 more added.
I don't know I mean, again, it's frustrating that it's you have to almost have a specialty in some of these zoning classifications. Is there a classifications that's closer to the zoning for the 4, or does it have to jump up to for the 6 for the RM40?
We're looking to see if a different district would give them only 4. Just if we could.
Can we get a map of the area up here?
We're not equipped to do that at the moment, I'm sorry.
Get a map of the area.
Somebody's got a laptop, you might be able to pull it up on a laptop.
Are you, Councilman, can I speak?
Yes,
Okay.
you're on.
The only district between, so the OR 20A allows 20 units per acre. There's also an RM 20A. The only district between there is the RM 30, and that would allow them to have 5 units.
Okay. I just didn't, I guess my question is getting more towards, like, obviously I agree with the councilman that you want a zoning that's more conforming, since this is a non-conforming zoning, and I just didn't know if the intention is 4, why there wasn't a zoning picked that is closer to 4 rather than 6.
we processed what the applicant requested. There's in neighborhood maintenance, it's not always just about, it's only not about the number of units, but the fact that the units here are so large, 3 stories, compared to the surrounding units that are on that street. There is a multifamily complex behind them, separated from them, but even if they were to provide a plan and have only 4 units, I don't see how this could comply with neighborhood maintenance.
Okay, I guess that I'm just struggling with that it's doubling the units allowed, and that there's not a more conforming zoning that guarantees what the neighborhood's been told of 4. So that's just my concern here, and why I'm struggling through this, and just seeing if there was a classification that might have been better, a zoning that might have been better to be
Madam
picked.
Chair, can I forward you the letter of support? The planning commissioners heard this. My neighbor showed up strongly at planning, and he sent in several letters of support for this.
Before the vote tomorrow.
And
yes, I have several other council members who wish to speak. Councilmember Withers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm rising in support of my colleague, Councilmember Scott Davis. The McFerrin Park area is a complicated area that has a whole lot going on in that vicinity, and there certainly are areas that have solid blocks of historic houses, but not all of the neighborhood is that way. And so I think there are certain sites where doing something a little bit different makes sense. Sometimes it may be the case that I would actually perhaps recommend revisiting neighborhood maintenance in some of those areas just generally. I think that's something that keeps coming up in the District 5 area, even though some of the District 5 neighbors participated in Nashville Next. I think that with the evolving of the city, even in the last couple of years, perhaps Councilmember Davis could work with the planning staff to just look at that area a little bit again to determine where neighborhood maintenance works or not. In this particular case, I do rise in support of my colleague. This is adjacent to River Chase Apartments, which is certainly a multifamily area. Adjacent to that, the Salvation Army. There are a lot of things around there. Perhaps neighborhood maintenance as a policy does not actually make sense on that parcel. There is a complete street grid already, as well as a sidewalk network. And so for those and other reasons, I do rise in support of my colleague on this one.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson, did you wish to speak again?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the future reference, if we could request a planning staff to bring the slide so we can rewatch when the question like this, so that would be very helpful for the future committee meeting. And so the point I want to make is ordinarily, I do not like to go against planning commissioner's recommendation. However, in this specific case, watching March 24th planning commission meeting, planning commissioners had to disapprove this plan because it was against the policy. However, they all agree the plan itself really fits in that particular neighborhood. For that comment, this is the only rare occasion I'm comfortable going against planning commissioner's recommendation and go with the sponsor of the bill.
Thank you. Councilmember Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just did want to know, I know that the council members fighting hard for his bill and noting that the neighbors were in support of it. Within our packet, it does show the neighbors and their addresses and who's in favor of it, and does note that the commissioners actually spoke in favor of it, as you experienced yourself, and noted just kind of the procedure more than the merits of the application. So those are present, even if we don't have the letters or the people here. We've got those testimonies in our packet.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy, do you want to speak again?
I just want to clarify that my questions are based on a policy matter, and I was asking, since it's disapproved because of the policy, I understand that the neighborhood is in support of this, but I think that it is important that when we have pieces of legislation before us that the Planning Commission has approved or disapproved, countywide or in a district, that I think it's important for us to understand the policy there, because I think often we're having things come before us that policy might need to be changed in the future, or maybe we need policy amendments somewhere. And I think it's important for all of our understanding. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. It's helpful for my understanding to know where they're coming from on a planning and policy position. So when pieces of property come up in my district, I want to make sure that I'm making the best decision for that as well when there are similar circumstances of moving property zoning closer to what is in the policy.
Thank you. Councilmember Hastings.
Yes, Madam Chair. I just wanted to come in and just say that Councilman Davis is of course, doing a big job, and I kind of feel him because we are in like neighboring districts, and where our districts are, the majority of our district is NM. Which really doesn't say anything to us. It's like, okay, keep everything the same, especially when we're looking to try to bring up our communities and put it into a place to where all of our neighbors and our constituents could be proud of what we do and where they live. And right now, it's substandard, and I would go and step behind him with everything that we have, because we are fighting to make districts with him, District 5 and District 2, be better than ever before. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis, you want to speak again?
The planning staff has been working with us in some improvements. As we saw at last week's planning commission meeting, I deferred a lot of bills and had on this floor the previous night where they're helping, revamp the policy. But the area is so large, and my area encompasses a part really close to downtown. And so lots of times, you'll have large-scale apartment buildings and quadplexes, that are there that we just don't know they're there because there was a policy of single family put over the whole area. Just because somebody 10 years ago made something RS5 does not mean that that quadplex or that apartment complex is gone. It stays there. And in fact, it keeps it there longer because they could be there by right. And so that's what we're running into lots of times. And the planning staff has been very diligent in helping and working with me.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, good, robust discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill's recommended. Next is BL 2016-277, sponsor is Sledge. Changes 0.34 acres from OR 20 and R6 to MULA zoning for properties located 1122, 1124, and 1126 3rd Avenue South. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-278, sponsor is Pridemore. Changes 1.92 acres from CN and RS40 to SP zoning for property located at Neely's Bend Road, unnumbered, at the northeast corner of Hudson Road and Neely's Bend Road, to permit up to 2 single-family detached dwelling units. I have a motion to defer for one meeting. Fair enough. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor of a one meeting deferral? Any opposed? Bill is deferred one meeting. Next is BL 2016-279, sponsor is Henderson. This cancels 1.5 acres of the Village Hall Planned Unit Development Overlay District for properties located at 413, 415, 417, 419, and 419B Village Hall Place. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Henderson, would you like to speak?
Just as a point of order,
Yes.
279 and 280 are somewhat inextricably related if we wanted to take those together, but happy to take them separately and speak to them if needed.
Okay, can we take them together? Yes, council says we can take them together. We are also, I'll read the caption, 280 changes 2.68 acres from RN4 and R20 to SP zoning for properties located at 413, 415, 417, 419, and 419B Village Place, and 2204 and 2202B Hobbs Road to permit up to 11 residential units. Thank you. That being said, any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Both are recommended. Next is BL 2016-281, sponsor is Scott Davis, disapproved by the Planning Commission. Changes 0.41 acres from RS5 to MUNA zoning for property located at 1300 Pinnock Avenue. Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one is, again, disapproved by Planning Commission. I do admire what district council members trying to do. However, this one, no matter which way I try to look at it, it is a spot zoning. If you would, planning could refresh memory and kind of give us capture of this zoning.
This application is a request to rezone from single-family residential, which would allow only residential uses and single-family specifically, to mixed-use neighborhood alternative zoning district, which is a mixed-use district that allows office and commercial and other uses in addition to residential. The policy on the property is neighborhood evolving, T4 neighborhood evolving, which is a solely residential policy. And so therefore, the addition of non-residential uses is inconsistent with the policy.
Thank you. For that, I will not be supporting this bill.
Councilmember Withers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of my colleague again on this one. For those who are familiar with the East Nashville area, you will know that Douglas Avenue includes Highland Heights School, which is a great asset, as well as commercial sprinkled periodically along Douglas, starting at Dickerson, as well as at some of the major corridors. We do have some emerging businesses that are coming. Some of the neighborhood associations in that area I'm aware of have been actively seeking more retail and business and employment opportunities, and Douglas Avenue is the right place to do that. And I think this is an appropriate location at a corner along a major street to do that, and I rise in support of my colleague on this one.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis. You're recognized.
Thank you. I apologize, Chair, for taking up so much of your time. There's a garage on here, and there's the old Sugar Shack, which sold ice cream on there. We won't go into details of the Sugar Shack, but more importantly, this was commercial one time. The private behind it is a garage, and like my constituents are saying, you know, they wanted more retail on Douglas, and once again, no one came in opposition for this, because once they look at it properly, they go, oh, never mind, and we go about a business. So I'm asking my colleagues, please support my decision. Thank you.
Councilmember Hastings.
Like my colleagues, Madam Chair, I wanted to stand and rise in support of this issue because we have unique areas, unique districts. That area there has been a lot of business on the Dickerson Road side of that corridor, which is a runoff. A lot of that area has had, you know, some crazy illegal business stuff going on there. So I stand in support of Councilman of the 5th District and say, you know what better to do? It's an evolving place. The planning department didn't necessarily name it that way, but we need it that way. Thank you.
Councilmember Mina Johnson, do you wish to speak again?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With all due respect, we do have a policy and we do have a process. And if that entire section is more suited with different policy and different structure, to make it right, it should go through community plan amendment. So policy and what's going above ground will match up. So we will not have such an agony. So that's what I would like to request in the future.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? I think we need a show of hands on that one. I'm gonna need your help. I don't have my chart. Show of hands. Okay, not roll call. All those in favor, raise your hands high so we can count. Thank you. 1, 2. Opposed? Thank you. Motion is approved. Next is BL 2016-282. Sponsor is Hayward, disapproved by the Planning Commission 701. This amends 138.02 acres of the Mansion Fontanelle Specific Plan District for properties located at 4105, 4125, 4225, and 4241 Whites Creek Pike and Whites Creek Pike unnumbered, to relocate the proposed hotel from the previously approved location to the newly added parcels. Been moved and seconded. I do see some discussion. Councilmember Johnson. Nina Johnson.
Thank you. This is again disapproved bill, and I think quite a few people may have received a phone call about policy not in line with the policy and so forth. I just want to go back to the history. Maybe planning can explain what happened, but my memory serves April 28th, Planning Commissioner unanimously disapproved this special policy expansion because it was, I think at that time it was a community amendment request and special policy request, both A and B. And Planning Commissioner unanimously disapproved community plan amendment and also zone change. And then a month later, May 26, it was a Whites Creek community amendment. And that time, planning staff actually recommended to defer the area where the Fontenelle is. However, planning commissioners decided to include that section and approved as rural, T2 rural maintenance area. I just want to remind of those history. And originally it was against the policy, and then a month later, Planning Commissioner reaffirmed the expansion is, yes, yet again against the policy. Why it is so important is because it's not just against the Fontenelle expansion, but at some point, we really have to listen to the community because Whites Creek is the small neighborhood, considering, but during the Nashville Next plan amendment process, if I remember, nearly half of the neighborhood came to the Nashville Next general plan amendment policy because they really wanted to define what rural is. So they had 3 years, they spent their 3 years, then again additional 10 months because there are some area, even though it's rural, but close to sewer and water line. So they want to keep rural to a suburban. So they went section by section, property by property, and overwhelmingly 95% of the Whites Creek people want to keep that area rural. So by approving this expansion, they will put the hotel in the middle of the rural area. I think we really need to step back and think what it will do to general plan and 20 years, 25 years from now. Because yes, I understand some community will embrace Fontenelle expansion, but it is not the referendum on Fontenelle. Rather, how we as a Nashville would like to see, because Nashville Next received award because recognizing what rural is and looking at what Nashville should be, not only now, but 25 years from now. So for that history and everything, I'm not comfortable approving this special policy expansion.
Councilmember Kathleen Murphy.
I don't know who can answer this, but some of the communications that we've received talks about archaeological remains on the property. Is there somebody who can? I don't know if the councilwoman knows, or is that something that has any plans for?
I will let Councilmember Haywood speak to that unless other folks also raise their hand as experts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to articulate that over a year now, I have been very investigative about this particular expansion. I've looked at it from every angle, and I've listened to the community. And this expansion has received overwhelming support. And the support has been in light of the fact that this expansion is more of an asset if you look at each particular genre, whether it be the rural character, whether it be the jobs, the money that's generated, or what have you, the traffic, everything that the opposers have been opposed to has been looked at very carefully and specifically. Now, as far as the archaeologist and the archaeology of it, we have been very investigative. We've looked at that. As a matter of fact, I have advisors to advise me in every area. I have Jim Lawson, that was with the Planning Commission for many, many years to investigate that and work with them along that area. The owners of Fontanelle have been very compliant. In every area that has been in question, they have been amenable and compliant. So I would just like to say at this time, I have investigated every area, and yes, Nashville Next, they came together many, many times, but since that time, I have met with the community in excess of what Nashville Next did, and we are not in any attempt trying to, I guess, overlook the fact that it is to remain rural, and everything in terms of the expansion speaks to remaining rural.
You, Councilmember Vercher.
Yes, I was just wanting, if planning could briefly advise us how we got to this point. If it was considered rural, how were they able to build in the first place?
It really did start with the Nashville Next process, but I won't belabor that portion of the discussion because it was extensive. For this particular application, the applicant did make a plan amendment application along with the rezoning application, and that plan amendment application was to expand the non-residential uses along Whites Creek Pike. And so when the Planning Commission considered both the policy amendment for the special policy to expand non-residential uses and the SP that would do the same, they disapproved both applications. Subsequently, the Planning Commission had the conversation about a T2 policy or a T3 policy. Both of those policies in the discussion were residential only policies. And so when they went in April, that was the discussion of the non-residential uses, and that plan amendment request was disapproved in April.
Thank you.
Let's see, Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I stand in opposition of this bill. First of all, this is not just a District 3 issue, but a District 1 issue. And I have to challenge Councilwoman Haywood on the fact that she has had as many meetings with the community as Nashville Next did, because at the last council meeting, I requested that this bill be deferred so we could meet, and she could meet specifically with District 1, and that did not occur. And I also agree with Council Lady Murphy, who asked a question about the archaeological remains, because we're talking about 12,000 plus graves, and it may have been investigated, but it has not been stated how they were going to address this issue with those remains. Are they going to leave them there? Are they going to remove them? If they remove them, where are they going to remove them and place them? So those questions, I think, needs to be asked and answered. I also believe that most of the people that are in District 1 who are against this live directly across from Fontanelle. There are like 21 families in that immediate area, and 17 of those families are against this project. So I believe that maybe the number that of people in District 1 who are for this are not those who are immediately and directly affected by it. I would ask the council if they would look at some of the key discussion points that has been provided to them, because the expansion itself is in non-compliant. The SP districts, the Fontanelle has already been in violation, and they've had several different zoning changes to this property, and I guess they're just trying to try them out until they get one right. I think that Fontanelle does not own the 26 acres of land that they say that they do. There's a petition with over 900 signatures that opposes this, and 250 of them are from Districts 1 and 3. I can't go on and on about this, but I too, again, would ask humbly that this issue be deferred so there can be a meeting with the District 1 constituents, because they have worked very, very hard and very diligent on this issue, and I just think that there needs to be more discussion with those who are directly affected. Thank you.
Councilmember Glover.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support this, and I'll tell you why. A couple of different reasons. I typically don't go into somebody else's district unless they ask me to, and Council Lady Hayward asked me to come in, and Haywood asked me to come in here and look at the project, and I did. And I mean, everybody that sits on this floor knows that if you throw a number at me, I start running numbers. I start trying to understand what's what. And as I looked at the sales tax that was being gathered, et cetera, I came up with how much money that they were actually doing there, number one. Number two, as I sat down and I looked at the project, I said, okay, financially it makes sense. That one of the key things that have been brought up is, are there financial resources here to make the project work? I'm fully convinced now that there absolutely are. And as I look at this, I also understand, because when you sit down with SPs, I happen to like SPs, and the reason I do is because you're specifying what exactly you're going to do. Another part that bothers me about this, though, is there seems to be some attacks sometimes on the council lady's character, and that bothers me. I firmly believe that she's had the meetings that she said she had. I firmly believe that there has been robust discussion. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think that she's been lax on trying to do the things that are positive for her community. As I look at this, I think we've all delved into SPs and what can happen if we don't change it, and if we don't watch out what can occur in there. And the economy will change rapidly on us. And whenever you look at a project, I think you have to look at the project on each of its merits and determine if it makes sense or not. In this situation, I believe that it does. It was already approved for a hotel. We're asking to move it less than a mile from where the crow flies. And so when we look at all of these things, and we look at the characteristic of the project and the quality of the project, unless you've been there, you really can't understand the quality of what this project will entail. And so when I look at that, I'm going to support it. Whether if the council lady wants to defer at one meeting to have another meeting, I mean, that certainly is her choice. But I'm going to support this because I do believe that due diligence has been done. And I think the council lady has met with the community, and there's always going to be, we all know, as area council members and district council members, there's always going to be some people who don't like it. There'll be people who do like it. I think once you weigh it out, I've come to the conclusion that there's more people that live in the vicinity that are okay with it. Now, there'll be people who will disagree with me on that, and that's okay. I will place my faith in the council lady on what she thinks is right for her district. And with that said, I will support it. Thank you, council lady.
Councilmember DaCosta Hastings.
Yes, Madam Chair. I just wanted to rise right behind Councilperson Glover on rising in support of this great and hard-working councilwoman that has been over this plan. Actually, I was the one that fussed with her and saying, man, why are you having so many meetings? At the 10th meeting, I was like, why are you doing so much? You know, there are so many people that were there at that meeting. You know, I have some friends and constituents and other guys that I know who are not necessarily in support of this, but this is not my district. I am a district that's right next to her, and with all of these numbers that are coming out, I think the numbers need to reveal on how many constituents that have worked really, really hard on behalf of that community and want to see the growth and want to see some things to happen. We're not necessarily, I don't think her bill, which I know, her bill is not to make this into my district, which is heavy commercial and all the above, but it is something that has already been there. Actually, the first part of this bill has already been approved. And I just wanted to, and this is one of the things that do bother me as well, I don't want to implement my district onto the bill of what the decision that she has, because of the fact that our jobs are hard already with dealing with every piece of legislation that we do. But I stand to rise in support, and I asked if everyone that's able to vote on this issue, if they would support her as she goes forth and as we change this city for the better. Thank you.
Councilmember Withers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of my colleagues have raised historic questions, and the majority of my district is located within historic zoning, and so that's something that generally I'm very familiar with, but I'm not as familiar with the National Register Rural District that was described. And so I first want to direct all of my colleagues to, in your packet, you will see from the minutes from the Planning Commission hearing on the SP that the Metro Historic Commission recommended approval with conditions. It says the parcels proposed for addition to the mansion at Fontanelle Specific Plan District are located within the National Register listed Whites Creek Historic District. The Historical Commission recommends that the site plan include landscape buffering along Knight Drive to preserve the rural character of the National Register District. I think from an early indication, the Historic Commission themselves, which is the body that's appointed to make those decisions about historic preservation, recommended approval, and I think that is something that for those who are focused on that aspect, which I am, we need to consider. Since that time, I have been able to do a little bit of additional questioning of the Historic Commission about some of the research on some of the really interesting points that constituents have raised. I'm not sure if Mr. Walker or a representative from the Historic Commission is here.
Is there anyone from
in the
Historic
audience
back there? I don't believe they were able to make it.
Okay, but Mr. Walker did work to help answer some of the questions that I had, and he reached out to a member of the Tennessee Division of Archaeology. There are some references to some different sites. The Mississippian Mound, the Tennessee Division of Archaeology representative recognized that the Mississippian Mound that is referenced and is nearby is located outside of the planned development footprint and would not be impacted by this development. The site as a whole was last surveyed in 1878, which is quite a long time ago. A lot has happened since that time. The Archaeology Division notes that, in fact, some of the sites have been disturbed through farming activity itself, and they are not confident that they are necessarily still in a pristine condition. And so I would like to maybe propose to the sponsor. One of the questions I asked is what do we do when we're building in an area that may or may not have archaeological features. The archaeologists stated that the best practices approach for archaic sites is to mechanically remove all topsoil within the planned impact area using a flat blade backhoe or gradle, monitored and directed by a qualified archaeologist. All exposed features larger than 30 centimeters, are then bisected to test for human remains, which, if present, can only be removed if a cemetery termination order is issued by the Chancery Court. And so, since in that vicinity, the really known feature is off-site, there is a possibility that things could be there, but frankly, that disturbance could happen through the building, even of houses. So the archaeologist recommends potentially adding that in as an amendment or as a condition to the SP for any kind of construction on that land. And I just wanted to give that information to my colleagues. Unfortunately, that expert from the Tennessee Division of Archaeology was out of town, and we just got this information today. But like some of my colleagues, I'm very interested in historic preservation and wanted to know about that. But if the sponsor would consider maybe adding that as a condition into whatever SP goes forward for this, I think that would help to address some of those concerns about disturbing archaeological sites.
Mr. Jameson, can you address the procedure for adding conditions to an SP? Is that something the council can do?
Yeah, and this is on third reading.
This is on third reading.
Can't amend it on third reading. It would be easier with a deferral, so we could do it per rule. If not, we would suspend the rules. I would try to take down as quickly as possible the specifics and have that formally introduced for council's consideration tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. That's just so we'll know the procedure. Councilmember Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am very appreciative of the work that has been done by our colleague, Council Lady Haywood, and I'm appreciative of the meetings that have been had, the conversations that's been had. I know that Ms. Logan from Planning didn't want to get too much into kind of the discussions that have happened, but I'm going to ask her to because being somewhat familiar with the process that had occurred, Carrie, do you mind giving just an idea of how many, what the duration of those meetings had been about White Creek's character?
Sure. It emerged really early on in the process, and there were several specific meetings that happened solely about this area. Towards the end of the process, it wasn't the community didn't have one voice on what they wanted Whites Creek to be, and so the commission ultimately deferred several areas to continue to discuss, and then we spent another year approximately talking about the policy for those areas, and the policy came back about a month after the rezoning application and plan amendment went through the Planning Commission.
And it was referred to earlier by one of my colleagues about the Nashville Next process, about when the public hearing came up for Nashville Next. I think it's accurate in saying that the majority of the comments were on this area, correct?
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay. So where I come to now is kind of where a lot of the commissioners, it seems, at least from the notes in our packet, had come to, which was, we are very much in an area that is under intense discussion and has been for some time. And I think that when you take into account where these commissioners are, kind of where they fell, and then the work that the department has done, quite frankly, with the community it's been 2 years at this point, I would say. Close to. I mean, from when our previous director was here.
Right. No, I'm saying maybe even more.
Maybe even more,
yes.
Okay. I'm reluctant to go against the commission's will on this because of their backgrounds and their extensive knowledge, along with the knowledge of the department. That's nothing to take away from the work that Council Lady Haywood has done from her community and trying to listen to all sides. But when we look through this, it's difficult for me to, and I will tell you, I will be in opposition to this. I would side with the commission and the department on this to say, yes, there's the potential to expand this, but the place that they're proposing, I don't think is appropriate for the time and place that we are in this discussion and that Whites Creek is in.
Councilmember Murphy.
I guess, Carrie, let me start with you. There's something in some of the notes that we were given about a dark sky compliant lighting plan. can you speak a little bit to that? But I want to reserve the right to speak afterwards.
We can look at the SP application that we have, the full plan, prior to tomorrow, but at this point, we're not aware of that being part of the zoning plan.
But I just don't know what that is. I mean, could you tell me a little bit more about like what that is and like, I guess, because I mean, I've been out that way and traveled the county, and it's a nice rural area, and I just don't know. I mean, expect when I go out there it's dark. What might, I mean, if we don't have this dark sky compliant lighting, like, can you kind of tell me more about that?
It would very basically be a low-level lighting plan to make sure that there is no light pollution coming from the development to the surrounding areas.
Okay. I guess I'm really concerned because so many times we've got a very large agenda in front of us today, and most of the things that we are passing in our districts and countywide are increasing density all over the place. And we're losing green space all over the place. And I think what was interesting just a week or two ago, I was reading through the conservation policy, and it says that policy, can be thrown to the wayside in order for higher, more important policies that allow more density. This is an area of our beautiful county that has remained rural, and I think that's wonderful. And I think there's a lot of conservation policy. I mean, you can see how much policy there is just looking at the analysis. And I think that is something that we've got to balance out, and we are approving so much density in other places. And this is almost setting up a monopoly for this type of business in that area, since there's not another option for a business like this somewhere in a similar setting. And that concerns me because I want to make sure that our rural areas stay rural as much as possible, and green space stays green space, because I know at least in my district we don't have a lot left. So I've spoken to the councilwoman about this, and I hope that if this does move forward, that we can put in some of these other dark sky compliant things and some stuff just to make sure that the neighborhoods and her constituents out there have as much protections in there as possible. And so I hope that will be considered before anything moves forward, whether it's this or something else in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Scott Davis.
Everyone's comments have been good. Everybody's entitled to their opinions. Everyone has great points. We've talked about, historical aspects. We talked about, protecting the burial grounds. And I'm happy that we're all so concerned about it. And I really am. But I want to remind my colleagues, your comments aren't personal. We all know that. And I'm glad a lot of us can leave our comments on the floor. But I have to remind people, not my district, it's her district. Now, one thing I do want to make clear, though, it bothered me just like it bothers some of you for and against some of the comments that were at my colleague about her not having meetings. And I don't want to keep kicking a dead horse per se, but Ms. Logan, if you can help me out for a second, her first meeting, how many people attended that? I saw about the comments, I believe it was 200 people. They took roll. They had a planning staff member there.
I believe all of the meetings were extremely well attended, but I don't have attendance numbers with me today.
Gotcha. In our packet, we have right here that 200 people attended at the first meeting, and planning staff were there, and also 100 people attended the second meeting. Unless I've not seen that kind of attendance unless you had like a waste transfer station in East Nashville. That's the only time I've ever seen an attendance like that. And to say that she did not have meetings or did not reach out to her constituents bothers me, because obviously she did. And none of my colleagues question that here. But when I see people in support and in opposition say they didn't hear, I'm just trying to figure out, you weren't at any of these meetings, and I know she had others. and I'm going somewhere here, Chair, please forgive me, but there was a person who lives in my district that wanted to do a development in her district. She turned them flat down and said no, because she met with her people over there, and they said no, and so I looked at him, well, there's the answer. It's a no. So I want to look at everyone else that we've all turned down developments that we've hated, and told them no because our people said no. I'm not the best judge. She is for her constituents. And so I want to look at all the other district council members. Please register your concerns, but you got to remember, that's her house. And we've all voted for things. I voted with Lonell where I didn't agree about a gas station, but I trusted that district council member, Larry Hager. I tell him all the time, I don't agree with you, Larry, but it's your house. Do what you want, Larry, and we got to remember that. And I have a lot to do in my district, so I have to put my faith in her. I'm sure you all have a lot of stuff to do in your districts, so trust your district council members, and come on.
Thank you. Councilmember Haywood.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that has spoken in support of the plan. As far as Council Lady Hurt, I'm not.
I'll just remind everybody, we should always address the chair.
Okay.
There are rules about
Yes.
naming other council members.
Okay.
This is about the merits of the case.
That's what I'm speaking about, the merits of the case, because she mentioned that, and this is very important, I think, as it relates to the case, that there were people in her district, in District 1, and I'm referring to those people, she said in District 1, that were opposed, that live in front of Fontanelle. Well, I question how people in District 1 could live in front of Fontanelle, which is clearly, unequivocally, District 3. The person that lives in front of Fontanelle is Linda Jarrett Thompson, and she is the seller of the acreage that Fontanelle has purchased. So I just take issue with that, not to mention I take equal issue with everything else. There has not been a request for people in District 1 to have a meeting with me. When I asked about the people in District 1, there was one person that was given, that the name was given to me in terms of being in opposition. But I have met with my constituents, and the overwhelming support of the people in my district are pro-Fontanelle. I have the comments. I believe in what they're doing over there. They have been very compliant with everything that has been asked of them in terms of the traffic, the noise. Initially, the boutique hotel was going to be in the hollow. At that point, conservation would have been compromised. Where it's going to be located at this point, there's not as much compromise in place. Also, I would like to mention that 75% of the acreage there at Fontanelle is dedicated to green space. If Fontanelle does not pass, I think that area would be far more compromised than it will be, which I don't look at as, if Fontanelle is able to do what has been proposed, there will not be a compromise. But if they're not allowed, that land will definitely be compromised. So at this time, I move for approval.
Thank you. We do have some more council members asking to speak. We'll continue discussion and keep that motion.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll bring you back to the end if you need to be. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think to Councilmember Sledge's point about the way that the audible community discussion around Whites Creek came up, I might ask planning staff to make sure I've got the timeline of all of this set up. So my understanding is that Nashville Next was going on for a period. There was considerable discussion about Whites Creek, but the absence of a firm and final community plan when Nashville Next itself was adopted as a citywide general plan. Is that correct?
There were 11 properties, or 11 areas specifically, that were deferred.
Okay, and it's those 11 properties, to my understanding, that were then just recently in May finally covered by a community plan for Whites Creek and Bordeaux?
Updated, yes.
Updated,
Finally
okay.
updated with new policies that were in National Next, yes.
And so across that entire period of the 2-year discussion of Nashville Next, the updated plan that included those 11 properties, did the conversation about the Fontanelle proposal, when did that enter the mix? Was it actually completely after the update, or had this conversation about this development already begun?
It was towards the end of that process, but it had already begun. Their applications actually appeared at the Planning Commission prior to the final vote to have the 11 areas updated.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to say again that this is District 1 and District 3, that I too am a council member, that this issue is not about Councilmember Haywood. And I take issue with any inference that there has been an assassination of her character, because it has not. When I say that I requested at the last council meeting, that's a fact. I did. I encourage someone to go and look at the tape, because I requested a deferment so a meeting can be held with District 1. I did do that. And I am standing as the representative of District 1. So whether people see me as the council person for that district or not, I am, and I'm standing for that district. And I too am a colleague of every council person in this room and those who are not in this room.
Thank you.
So I say again that I believe that it would be councilmatic courtesy if there is a meeting with District 1 and those that are concerned. As far as those people who live close to Fontanelle, there is a development called Whites Creek Manor, which is adjacent to the Fontanelle site, where you have several people. Most of those people in that manor are against and opposed to this bill. And I humbly ask that it is given. And when I also made the statement about the challenge of Nashville Next, Nashville Next met for 2 years. Councilwoman Haywood has not been a councilwoman for a year. So if you say that she's met as many times as Nashville Next has, I just think it was a little exaggerated, and that's the reason.
I'm going to ask again that we stick to the merits of the case and not talk about what he did and what she did. And we'll come back to the motion that's on the floor, which is currently to.
Well, I understand and I appreciate that, but I take issue because I am not pleased with some of those comments made as if I'm not here.
I believe everyone here is working hard to do what's best for Nashville.
And that's another thing. I'm glad you said something about that, because I cannot tell you the number of meetings that I've had with District 1 in regards to this issue.
I believe that. Thank you. Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, again, this is not where councilmanic courtesy we should follow, because we charge planning department and planning commission to do the job, to analyze what is appropriate for the area and what is appropriate for the district. It's not disregard to district council person, but we do have a function as a government. We do have a planning department. We do have planning staff who knows the area and who knows the development appropriate for the area, not only now, but 20 years, 25 years from now. And the planning commissioners, we ask to volunteer to get their opinion. So it's not a councilmanic courtesy, the area council person knows. So we really cannot discount the fact it was unanimously disapproved by planning commissioners. Also, I would like to point out a couple of facts. The Fontenelle, they are originally asked for the special policy back in 2009. Since then, they have asked 5 amendments on the plan. And this is the 6th amendment. And interestingly, 4th and 5th, they do have a hotel plan. Actually, as of right now, today, they can build the hotel right next to the Fontenelle Mansion, which is a mile away from the White Creek Pike. So it's nestled in the woodsy area. So it will be so nice and still be able to keep rural character, whomever want to drive those White Creek Pike area. So by having this hotel expanding lower area across from some large open area and also some newly developed subdivision, that will destroy the character of the rural. Yes, they will have a rural-looking hotel, but looking at some people coming in, 150, actually 134 guests and 300 convention people coming in day in, day out, that will certainly destroy the rural character 95% of the White Creek people wants to preserve. So we as a council has responsibility to think deep and hard. It's not, councilmanic courtesy should occur in here. Every single council member has to think what we want to be as a Nashville. That's what Nashville Next is. Many, many people spoke out, participated, and then they even went in to create rural subdivision regulation because they needed to know what rural really means. And we have accomplished that. That's why we have awarded a Nashville Next general plan. So we as a council has responsibility to uphold those policy, not helping or not helping one entity. So I urge other council member to really think about the policy standpoint. And I think, since sponsor of the bill is not, I understand, not willing to defer to further discuss. So as of right now, I am totally oppose this plan.
Councilmember Vercher.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I want to make sure that I have the timeline clear. So I understand the Nashville Next. I understand the various amendments that that was submitted. I guess my question is, and maybe planning can answer this, if there was an ongoing community plan amendment or discussion, what have you, why were they even allowed to submit an application?
Because in that case, we can't prevent them from submitting an application. So when they submitted their application, we had to accept it and process it, and we continue to process the overall Nashville Next amendments as well.
Okay, so our planning department knowingly knew that this community was having ongoing conversations regarding their community plan, the amendment, right? And we allowed them to submit an application. Just want to make sure I'm clear.
Yeah, we can't prevent them. We can't prohibit them from submitting an application.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm going to support this.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Councilmember Bednay, have you spoken on this yet? We're beginning to get repeats, so I want to let people who haven't spoken yet speak.
I'll speak.
Okay.
I haven't speak yet. So
Briefly. It is getting late.
my I have great respect for Council Lady Haywood and her work, and if it wasn't because of that, I would vote against it because of concerns about historic preservation, having been a member of Historic Nashville, and also the fact that we had a divided audience last time. But because of her work, I'm on the fence. So I wanted to make a motion to defer for one meeting and ask Council Lady Haywood, with all due respect, if you will consider having a meeting and include people from District 1, and perhaps, even though perhaps it's not necessary, so there is no arguments about it. Is that, no? I'm getting heads saying no.
Oh, I need to ask a procedure question.
Okay.
We can have this discussion of whether to withdraw the Councilmember Haywood. I'll let you respond to that request.
My plan is not to defer. If I'm able to say this, Council Lady Hurt says she held several meetings with District 1 regarding Fontanelle. I would have been more than pleased had I been invited to some of those meetings that she says she held. I was never invited.
I believe the issue before us is, do we want to continue with the motion to
I'd like to
approve, or-
continue with the motion.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we have anything else? Councilmember Bednay.
Well, I was just, is that something that you're okay with, doing a deferral for one meeting? No? She said no?
No,
Okay.
I've met
Okay.
and
All right.
We'll continue.
So I guess my vote will be to abstain.
Fair enough. Okay, Councilmember, let's see. Okay, if you have spoken before, I would just ask that you not repeat what you said before. We were all listening carefully the first time, and I will run through this list still. Councilmember DeCosta Hastings. Pushing your button. Frozen up, give me just a second. Ah, there you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All due respect to the overall House and every person that is representing your communities, because I know all of us are working tirelessly and working hard to represent every person within our districts correctly. But I would also come back to say here that there is a place of councilmatic courtesy as well, because the last time that I looked, this area is within District 3. I do know that me being a neighbor to District 3, that there will be things will affect, or just like I hear in my district, District 2, I hear the outside amphitheater downtown, but that doesn't affect the overall reasoning for me to oversee District 19 or whoever that is over that territory. It is so pushing that where it's perplexing at this moment. Then too, one of the things that I wanted to add as well is Nashville Next has been brought up several times in this conversation. One of the things that my district, and I know District 1, because I lived and I worked, and I lived there, I shopped there, I work around those areas in District 5. All of us in the North Nashville Northeast corridor, we were not necessarily happy with the overall assumption of Nashville Next, because it did nothing to put us into a position to where we can move further. Right now, most of our areas are in M, so it's basically saying for what we have, and we have the most abandoned houses, we have the most tax properties, we have a lot of things that are going on within our community other than one development, and this is not going to break us. But the one thing that we do need to do is find out what we can do to help the constituents that live in our district. This is not this bill would not break or make or break anybody, but what will make a break is for us finding houses and doing all of our jobs overall. And I really, really hope and pray that we are able to push and work together to stand behind this woman and the things that she has coming forth, because I know as a council person of a district that is really, really changing on a continuous basis that there will be bigger fish to fry, and I think that we just need to support her with everything that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Scott Davis. You're done. Great. Councilmember Steve Glover.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like planning to answer for me. Is all of the property in discussion here in District 3? Okay, thank you. Number one. Number two, let me tell you why I like the SP projects, because you have control of those. And now I'm going to ask through you, Chair, a planning question. All right, this is already zoned, if I remember correctly, RS20. What your parcel map said?
R15, I believe.
Is RS15?
R15.
Okay. All right. So so here's one of the things in my district, and I'm just going to specifically talk about in my district. One of the things that always concerns me when we don't do an SP versus just leaving the zoning as in play. What is the ruling on R as far as R15 going to R7.5? If they give up green space just like RS, or what's the how does that work?
Well, in this case, because it is a rural policy, they would fall under the Planning Commission's new subdivision regulations for rural properties. Mm-hmm. And so that may limit the number of properties that they could, the resulting lots, regardless of whether it was R15 or RS 7.5, because the lots are required to be comparable to what's around it. If it were rezoned to something smaller, it could potentially have a few more lots, but at this point in time, with the subdivision regulations, our estimates are that it could have somewhere between 5 and 7 lots.
Okay. 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 Well, the only thing I'll say, I mean, when I went out there, I looked across the street. They're beautiful homes, but it sort of starts looking like subdivisions, whereas this, in my opinion, is going to be a characteristic of the area. So anyway, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I defer to Council Lady Haywood.
Thank you. Councilmember Haywood. Don, it's acting up again. Okay, you're on.
I move to defer one meeting.
I believe, do we need, you would withdraw your motion to approve?
Yes.
And move to defer one meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded and well discussed. All those in favor of a one meeting deferral, say aye. Any opposed? Motion deferral is recommended for that robust discussion. Next is BL 2016-283, sponsor is Sledge. This changes 1.02 acres from R6 to SP zoning for properties located at 522, 524, and 526 Southgate Avenue to permit up to 23 residential units. Been moved and seconded. I'm going to assume that if you want to talk about this one, push your button again. Seeing no one in the discussion queue, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-284, sponsor Scott Davis, disapproved by the Planning Commission. Changes 0.34 acres from RS5 to R6 zoning for property located at 708 Ward Street. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Davis.
This is the bill that my community came out in support of, and even though there was no opposition, I had them come up to speak, you know, just to show people, And this is an area that we are working on policy changes. However, the planning staff, as wonderful as they are, they don't have 100 people to assist them in just policy changes. We are currently working on 3 in my area. However, though, my neighbors, the homeowners on that street were here and were in support with no one in opposition. And so even though our commissioners and our planning staff do a wonderful job, you know, sometimes when you have maintenance on land that's over a quarter of an acre, where you could subdivide even at an RS5, but you can't because the policy is now maintenance, you know, sometimes you got to change it. But more importantly, my constituents lined up in support with no opposition.
Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this is, if I remember correctly, planning staff, isn't it the middle of the street, like a third or fourth house on that street? And I literally kind of change one zoning, especially this street. If I remember correctly, both sides is RS5, but only this one in the middle will be changed to R6.
That's all correct, yes.
So for that reason, I cannot, you know, think over as a spot zoning. For that, I have to oppose it.
Thank you. Councilmember Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd share the similar concern just because I think in the notes from the packet we have from the commissioners and from looking at the map, this is right in the middle of a block, and it's tough for me to be able to support this upzoning in the middle of the block without rezoning the entire street. So with that in mind, I would have to oppose this one.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With this number of departures from where we seem to be with the community plan, I wonder if the council member from District 5 has an intent to work with planning staff to re-examine some of the policies out in that district. Because I'm fairly familiar with the district, but I also feel like we're seeing, you know, more departures from policy in a relatively contained area, and I'm wondering if that, either to me, that's a suggestion that there's a broader-based misunderstanding of the community preferences there, that the policy we have there, despite Nashville Next, didn't capture those preferences, or some other unknown issue. And I wonder if maybe the council member has something that he is considering doing to address that.
And I would ask planning to respond if what the options are there.
For each zone change request, there is a process to amend the community plan. On some of these, we have not had an application to amend the community plan, but we would have evaluated it if it had been submitted. On a larger scale, we are working with the councilman to narrow in on some areas that need particular and immediate focus so that we can engage the community and look at those policy areas.
Thank you. Councilmember Withers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That largely answered my question. I know several years ago, well, during the East Nashville Community Plan days, there had been a detailed neighborhood design plan for quite a bit of what is today Council District 5. And some of the neighborhood leaders, even leading up to Nashville Next, had expressed an interest in, at that time, updating those. But I definitely think that doing a fresh look, perhaps, at District 5, particularly with a lot of, I think, positive change coming in, particularly along the Dickerson corridor, and maybe expanding neighborhood maintenance or some of those things along a little bit further in along that corridor, since there seems to be a lot of interest in that, would be beneficial and would probably save everyone a lot of time. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis. Scott Davis.
I just want to, as the planning staff has said, we are looking at areas and we're addressing it. Once again, I wish we can afford 100 additional staff members to handle all of this, but I'm going to reiterate this, okay? When the neighbors come out in support, and when the owner and the owners of those houses around there, even and there's no opposition, you know, once again, I'm not perfect, and the staff's not perfect, the commission, no one is perfect, you know, but once again, you know, I have to support my neighbors and their requests, and especially when we're talking about economics in this city, you know, and this is not a front on the great planning staff or on the planning commissioner or on our chair who works extra hard, okay? But a lot of times when you're looking in areas and when you have neighbors coming out in support in my district, especially long-term neighbors who have lived there and invested in this property for years, and when they're trying to develop their property along the street, you know, which that's why I had them come speak in support, even though we had no opposition, you know, and just going back to the record, this is RS5. The land is over 10,000 square feet. So if this was an evolving area, they would have been able to subdivide, and we would not have had an issue. But because it was maintenance, no slam at the planning commission or the planning staff, then this wouldn't be in front of us. But when the neighbors ask me, and when they come in support with no opposition, you know, and I respect my colleagues' opinions, you know, but I got to go with my neighbors. I urge them to go with those too, because when you say we're going to vote against this or not approve it, even though you came in support that street to allow this to happen, it's like our voice doesn't matter. We're just going to listen to a policy where we know we may need to change. You know, if I had opposition like other stuff, I can see, let's maybe take a look at it. And I even have more opposition when I take it back sometimes to planning and we get an approved plan, then I get opposition too at times. But, you know, I'm just asking because of the neighborhood support and, you know, if we need more people to come and speak in support, more emails, okay, let's go. So just thank you for your time and please approve this.
I'll speak on this one as well. If I remember this one, there were several neighbors who stood up and said, I would like to do this to my property too. And I think I wrote a note that said, as Councilmember Sledge has suggested, the whole block should be rezoned.
And we've already filed too. A lot of those same neighbors, we've already filed the whole block. But, you know, why should we hold somebody else? That's why his neighbors came in support. We're doing this too. They've already filed, you know, for Rosedale and Ward all the way up down. And they are meeting with planning. One of them, they talked to Bob Lehman, and they're going to do a policy amendment for down Rosedale. So we're working in that direction. I have a policy amendment meeting on July 26th at the East Precinct with Cindy, our policy sheriff. I mean, we're going down that road, but once again, the planning staff does not have 100 extra folks because my area, you got to remember, is large and it's bigger than most because the people are kind of spread out. So I need your support.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilmember Murphy.
I want to make sure that I heard this right. I think the council member from District 5 said this lot was over 10,000 square feet. And if it's over 10,000 square feet and it's RS5, why can't they subdivide? Why can't they divide into two?
Because in neighborhood maintenance policy areas, the lots are required to be compatible with the surrounding lots. So the planning staff does an analysis that looks at the frontage and the size of the lots on either side, as well as the setback of the homes and other conditions that could make the proposed development harmonious. And so in this case, it's not just the lot size of the base zoning district. They would also have to meet a compatibility requirement with a frontage of the lots on either side and the lot size of the lots on either side.
Okay. And then I guess if the council member could speak to why he's not doing the whole block or the both sides of the street on this one. I missed that. I'm sorry. I mean, was that like discussed with the community of doing that, or that's part of the later zoning that you're doing?
Because planning's comments, they wouldn't necessarily support it on their comments right here. They weren't going to support the entire block anyway. And so the neighbors were like, well, we'll just let him do it for his property so they can subdivide. And they got the notes right here. But the biggest issue is now my neighbors are coming back, and this is not a developer. These are my neighbors. I'm not going to have my neighbor wait when the other neighbors have already filed on that street to have the same thing done. And we're getting in lockstep, you know, with the policy changes. But once again, Ms. Logan, if I'm correct, if this was an evolving area, they could have subdivided without a problem, right?
If it's an evolving area, they would have just had to meet the base zoning.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. And so we're working through those changes. But once again, you know, the neighbors came in support, you know, and the house across the street in support, the house up the street in support, the other house. I gotta listen to my voters. So I don't understand. I'm trying to work with the commission, but I don't get, you know, and I'm sorry if I sound frustrated, is you know, they came. And I'm feeling a lot of these projects, you know, and I hate to go there, you know, when my neighbors come up in support, and when there are developers who may not fit the mold or the criteria of what a normal developer in Nashville may look like or be, you know, it's starting to be like, well, what do we do? How many more hoops does the average person have to jump through? And when the neighbors are in support, and I'm the council person, you know.
You win kudos for being the most creative council member. No question. I would maybe suggest, council member, as these continue, to check with the planning staff before you file and get their suggestions on what they think the planning commission might support, because it seems like there's a lot of great stuff coming through, and we always get there and think if we'd done this instead of that, we'd be supportive. So that may have us all some heartache.
You're absolutely right, Council Lady. But this was filed like way back.
I hear you.
You know. Mm-hmm.
You've been persuasive. All right. Any other discussion? Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I think correct or preferable course of action would be go with the community plan amendment first, so this zone change will comply with the policy. Because if we do one by one, just spot zoning, we will totally destroy policy and process. So for that reason, I still be opposed to this one.
Thank you. Okay, it's been discussed. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Do a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. 1, 2. Opposed? 3. Bill's recommended. Thank you for that good discussion. Next is BL 2016-286, sponsor O'Connell. Changes 0.90 acres from ORI and OR20 to SP zoning for property located at 1 Music Circle South to permit an office building. Been moved. Was there a second? Yeah, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right. I think we're down to 9. Is that what you get? Next is BL 2016-288, Scott Davis, approved by the Planning Commission 10-0. Changes 0. I just wanted to give you kudos. Changes 0.46 acres from CS to MUGA zoning for properties located at 2, 4, and 6 Legan Avenue. Is there a motion? And seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Yes. Okay. Motion is recommended. Excellent. Next is BL 2016-289 by Scott Davis, also approved by the Planning Commission. Oh, Anthony Davis, I will. Also approved by the Planning Commission. Amends 2.55 acres of the Porter Road Specific Plan District for property located at 1509 Porter Road and Porter Road unnumbered to add parcel 237 and permit a maximum of 50 residential units. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-290, sponsors Roberts. Changes 27.87 acres from IR to SP zoning for property located at 1407 51st Avenue North, 1640 54th Avenue North, and 54th Avenue North unnumbered, north of Centennial Boulevard, to permit a mixed-use development with up to 394 multifamily units. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councilmember Bedney?
Yes, I have a question for the council lady. This is a 394 multi-unit project in a part of the city that is being gentrified. I wanted to get some feedback from you on how many of these units are workforce or affordable.
Hold on, I'm looking. Sorry, it's getting late. Where are you? There you are.
So we're working with St. Luke's on a program that we could possibly do a thing where going to supplement this, and St. Luke's would actually get the tax write-off. It's a kind of a complicated deal that we're mimicking out of a study they did in Atlanta, another project that really worked and worked well. My answer before we had that meeting last week would have been zero. Zero workforce housing.
But, Council Lady, so can I talk to her? Or no, I need to
You
talk?
just face this way and say whatever you want to say.
So I really need to get a yes answer because, you know, people are being gentrified from the nations, are coming, creating, it's...
I know.
So the only way to ensure that that will happen is with some kind of a deed restriction or some kind of a legal way of ensuring that that will happen. And so for me to vote for it, and I hope you take this the right way. I mean, it has to do with the balance of how people live around the city. So if you have any information that you could share with us that will help me vote yes on your project, that's what I'm asking.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I completely understand that, and I feel the same way. And a lot of this displacement, I'm doing 3 deals in August, September, and October at St. Luke's because people are getting displaced primarily in District 20. I mean, it's heartbreaking. However, this project didn't have any incorporated into it. I would love for you to hear what we have planned about to supplement this income. It's amazing, this deal we're putting together. I personally can't describe the details to you, but I'm going to give you contact information, and hopefully that would help you. Help change your mind, because I think well, I won't go into the details of it. It's might change your mind.
Excellent. Any other discussion? Seeing none in the queue, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, duly noted. Moving right along. I think next is BL 2016-291. Sponsor is Murphy. Amends 5.65 acres of the Hills Center, Sylvan Heights Specific Plan District for property located at 610 Sylvan Heights Way at the southwest corner of the intersection of 40th Avenue North and Charlotte Avenue to allow uses permitted under MULA zoning and liquor sales. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-292. Sponsors O'Connell. Changes 0.38 acres from R6 to SP zoning for property located at 1623 and 1625 7th Avenue North to permit up to 7 residential units. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-294. Sponsor is Mendez. Changes 12.06 acres from R6 to RS 7.5 zoning for various properties located along Burgess Avenue, Corbett Lane, Orlando Avenue, Patina Circle, and Rural Avenue. And there is an amendment. Substitute. I see proposed amendment. It's in a substitute? Okay. There is a substitute. Would the sponsor like to say anything about the substitute?
Sure. So there were 5 objecting parties. I worked with them over the last couple weeks, and one of them will still be able to subdivide their property after the rezone, so they are staying in, and the other 4 are being excluded in the substitute, and they all have been advised what I was going to do, and no complaints. Also communicated with a neighbor who is going to be now adjacent to where the zoning change was, and haven't heard from that person either that he objects. So I think this satisfies the concerns of the 5 objecting parties.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion? Ooh, yes. Councilmember Murphy.
I'm abstaining.
Duly noted. Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councilmember Mendez somewhat answered my question, but I just wanted to make sure one of the property who will be able to subdivide will be by any chance 174 rural?
Yes.
Thank you. For that, I feel comfortable supporting this. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we had some limited discussion about the substitute prior, and I think my only question here is whether the substitute and planning staff, I guess, can speak to this, whether the substitute is in fact approved as drafted as a substitute.
I don't think it significantly changes what the Planning Commission reviewed and approved.
Councilmember Glover.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, sponsor, you knew what my concerns were here to try and make sure we weren't downzoning or changing people's property and the owners. So are you're satisfied that everybody that had strong objections have been met, and that, I mean, it sounds like you just have one that's kind of hanging out there that by them not calling back, we're assuming, or?
Okay, so thanks for the question. The one that I am keeping in is a large enough property to subdivide. I have communicated with them by email a couple different times since I made the decision to keep them in, and I haven't heard from them. I've communicated with the other neighbors that I'm taking out, and they're all very tight-knit. They live across the street from one another, and so while I haven't actually heard from them, I'm confident that they're satisfied.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Great. Any other questions? Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to follow up to Councilmember Glover's question, because I was at the first community meeting, and there was a concern was raised, and some people who are not opted out was properly opted out, and so the rest of the property who were really enthusiastically for this downzoning. So I think we can really support this bill.
Very good. Seeing no other people in the queue, all those in favor? Aye. And one abstention. Any against? And that was the substitute. Now we'll vote on the bill as substituted. All those in favor? Any opposed? One abstaining. Next is BL 2016-295, sponsors Karen Johnson and Vercher. This applies a new urban design overlay to 109.9 acres of various properties located along Old Murfreesboro Pike and Murfreesboro Pike between Donaldson Pike and south of Franklin Limestone Road. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. I do see Councilmember Mina Johnson. Nope, that's left over. Councilmember Glover.
Very quickly, planning, could you explain to me, please, exactly what this does to this 109 acres, if you don't mind, please?
This is the application of an urban design overlay. There's already one on a large section of Murfreesboro Pike. This would extend it a little farther to the north. We've been working with Council Ladies Johnson and Vercher on this application. It would add design requirements to development in those areas. Wouldn't change any of the uses that are permitted, but would add some design requirements.
Okay, so it's kind of making the whole area conforming then. All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Seeing no other questions in the queue, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. We're up to 11. Next is BL 2016-296, sponsors Hager, changes 785 acres from IG to IR zoning for various properties located along Burnett Road, Swinging Bridge Road, Industrial Drive, and Old Hickory Boulevard. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-297. There has been a roll call vote requested for this one as well. This was disapproved by the Planning Commission 4-3. Changes 19.27 acres from RM20 to RS15 zoning for property located at Hickory Hollow Parkway, unnumbered, west side of Hickory Hollow Parkway. Do I have a motion? And seconded? Been moved? You can't second the bill you moved. Someone else second. You can speak. We'll get to that. All right, Councilmember Dowell.
Thank you. I am going to defer this until October 4th. I can't talk. I've been here so long. To October the 4th. I've had some, I would say, a productive meeting with the developer, and so we're looking at this property and to see, you know, what the options are for it. So I will refer it back to planning at that time. But I want to thank all of you for supporting me. I really appreciate it. So I move to defer it until October the 4th, and I think we'll have a resolution to it by then. So
Great. So it's a motion to defer to October 4th and re-refer to the Planning Commission. Is that correct? Okay, to Planning Commission. Excellent. Any other discussion on the deferral? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. Next is BL 2016-298. Sponsor is Davis. I believe this is one that's deferring. Okay, Councilmember Davis. Whoops, I have to give you a comment. Yes, sir, you're up.
I deferred this at planning. I need a deferral through. How many meetings do I need? Two. I need a 2-meeting deferral.
Okay.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that we're diligently working with the planning commission.
Good plan.
And the planner is on.
Okay. So there is a motion to defer 2 meetings. Is there a second? I see some people in the queue. Is this to discuss the motion to defer? No. Okay, we'll vote on the motion to no. That's the only thing. I'll go ahead and recognize these people and we'll get out of it. Councilmember Dowell, you're not speaking on this one. So Councilmember Bedney.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the sponsor that when the legislation comes back, I want to understand better. You seem to be building rezoning for a lot of units. I want to know how many of those units are going to be workforce or affordable. And so if I can have that information when it comes back, I appreciate that.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Davis.
Well, a good portion of those will be affordable. In fact, my community members stayed to almost midnight in support of this rezoning. But we're working things out, and it's going to be a lot of affordability. I agree with you, Councilman Bidney. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So we're voting on a 2-meeting deferral. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is deferred. Next is BL 2016-299. Sponsor is Sledge. Changes 1.8 acres from RM20 to SP zoning for properties located at 1440 and 1500 12th Avenue South and Wedgwood Avenue, unnumbered, northeast of Wedgwood Avenue and 12th Avenue South, to permit a maximum of 150 multi-family units. Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-300. Sponsor is Kindle. Changes 2.86 acres from RS5, R6, OL, OG, CS, IWD, and IR to ORIA zoning for properties located at 3100 Charlotte Avenue and 405, 409, 411, 413, and 415 31st Avenue North. I have a letter from the sponsor asking for approval. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? We have one bill that was referred to the Hill, maybe 2. Okay, we'll go back and pick those up at this point. He sent a letter. Yes. Okay, first is BL 2016-217. Sponsor is Hastings. I have a letter asking for approval. This changes 17.46 acres from R8 to IWD zoning for properties located at 2915, 2917, 2919, 2919B, Brick Church Pike, and Brick Church Pike, unnumbered, approximately 975 feet north of Fernco Drive. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is approved. And there was one more. This was Council Members Huezo and Swope. I do not see sponsors. I do not have a letter, so we will defer by rule. Are there any late items? If not, then 2 hours later, I will adjourn this committee.